Hello, my name is Raffi Akbar. And despite my passion for motorcycles and engineering, I wouldn't call myself a great rider. For one, I'm 21. I only have 4 years on the saddle. I cruise slower than my peers. I corner slower than my peers. I ride trails like a tractor. And I've dropped this bike so much that its teardown value is probably worth more than its resale value. But when I ask my peers, retired street racers, motocross athletes, long distance tours, they also would say that their accomplishments wouldn't necessarily make them great riders. So that brings the question, what makes a good rider? Okay, section two. Let's go. So, what makes a good rider? Well, one could say that it's someone who can get from point A to B the fastest. So some could say that someone who has the most consistent cornering form. Some could say that someone who can circumnavigate the world on two wheels. And while those are great accomplishments, that's the thing. They're accomplishments. They're not the whole story. You could be the fastest man on the Isle of Man TT, but if you still tailgate someone for a kilometer, then you're no better than any other idiot. And more importantly, it doesn't answer our question of what makes someone a good rider. In order to answer that, we need to take a moment and forget about what a rider can do and how he approaches riding before he even turns on the engine. The first thing a good rider should think about before riding is themselves. Any understanding that a good rider is one that can ride the next day. Because ultimately, the root cause for the majority of motorcycle accidents isn't a lack of safety equipment, it's not mechanical failure, but it is riding beyond your limits. It's about riding when you're too drowsy and sleepy to do so. It's about riding when you're too emotionally overwhelmed. It's about riding while ignoring your bike's mechanical limitations. It's about going too hot into a corner thinking you're that guy. Being a good rider isn't just about saving slip ups and getting yourself out of trouble, it's about staying out of trouble in the first place. It's about risk management, it's about ego management, it's about common sense. Being a good rider means knowing yourself, your capabilities, and your limitations. Knowing those things are paramount to being a good rider. Barely got anywhere, it's already covered in mud. Once a good rider inspects themselves and deems themselves fit to ride, we can shift the focus to the actual machine. And once again, it starts before the ignition ever does. And that's having mechanical literacy. Now, I'm not saying that you need to be able to reverse engineer an entire motorcycle, and not saying that it is necessary to be able to become your own mechanic in order to be a good rider. That's not necessarily the case, in my opinion. What I am saying is that you need to have mechanical empathy. That's to say, to uphold yourself to your maintenance routines and be able to understand what your motorcycle is trying to communicate with you. It's about noticing mushy brakes, under or overinflated tires, weird idling, weird sounds from loose rattling bolts. It's about to be able to understand the bits of information your motorcycle is trying to communicate with you through the bars, through your legs, through your body. It's about being able to understand what your motorcycle is trying to communicate with you. Because a good rider does not simply treat this as an appliance, they treat it as it is a complex moving machine with needs and limitations. This machine is an extension of human capability. That's why mechanical literacy is so important. Because if you do not understand the capabilities and the limitations of your machine, then you also won't know the capabilities and limitation of you yourself as a rider. Notice though I said an extension of human capability, not a substitution, not a replacement, but an extension of human capability. Because it doesn't matter if it's a Scoopy or an H2, it's just a machine, a servant to its operator, you. So the next thing a good writer does is build good writing skills. And I mean practical skills, not just the ability to save yourself from a wreck, but to also build small repetitive habits to avoid getting to that point at all. Because as the old military saying goes, when faced with stressful situations, we don't rise to the occasion, we fall back on our training. And the same applies with motorcycles. There's only so much time to think before you run off the corner at 80 kilometers per hour. So by practicing good habits like preloading your brakes before turns, scanning the road for hazards, riding defensively, keeping distance in traffic, and staying away from blind spots, practicing these mundane skills to the point of autonomous muscle memory is the key to good riding. And it doesn't have to be flashy. It doesn't necessitate a track day. It doesn't necessitate circling a parking lot for hours a day. Those are great, and if you can do it, do it. But it doesn't need to be that. It can be small things like being extra mindful of how you ride in traffic, or how you scan the road, or paying closer attention to how you squeeze the brake levers and tilt into a turn. Do dedicated practice sessions if you can, but at the very least, be mindful about how you ride. And the last thing that makes a good writer, in my personal opinion, is understanding that this world is ours to share. Because riding a motorbike can make you feel independent in your own little world, but the reality is that we share this world with other people with their own lives, their own excellences, their own flaws, their own bad driving habits. So it's important to understand this. Because by understanding this, you then understand why we have certain things that we do. That's why we ride defensively. That's why we ride while we're invisible. That's why we have driving etiquettes, respect road markings, respect traffic laws. That's why it's so important for us to improve how we ride, not just to get from A to B faster, but to also get from A to B easier, calmer, safer, so that we can ride another day, meet new riders another day. Because the world is chaos, but riding is fun. So, in summary, what makes a good rider? It's self awareness, it's knowledge, it's a desire to learn, it's a desire to coexist in the world with other people. In short, to be a good rider is really no different than to be a good person. My name is Raffi Akbar, and thanks for watching.